back to the podcast. We are so excited to be here with you today, and we are going to be talking about a very fun topic, insecurity.
Being untangled from insecurity.
Being untangled from insecurity,
yes,
exactly.
Yes.
And I mean, I know for me, this is something that I've personally struggled with a lot in my life. And I feel like I just used to kind of accept it as part of my identity because I was very shy. And so when you're really shy, you're like, oh, I'm insecure. And it's just my personality, right? It's just, we're like, oh, it's my personality type. And it's like, well, wait a second. Like, it's not really your personality type. Like, it's fear, right? That's really what we're dealing with is fear. And so we just kind of want to go through and just talk about some of the ways that we have kind of helped untangle ourselves from insecurity. Obviously not from it forever because we all still deal with it sometimes, but just kind of breaking free of that insecure mindset that I think sometimes it's easy to fall into.
Yeah, like those thoughts that we just listen to every single day and we don't realize that they're a problem and we don't realize that they're slowly like shaping our identity, but we just accept them and we think, like you said, like that's just my personality. Because like I'm introverted. You are, we've talked about this. Like we're introverted and that doesn't mean that like, you know, it's like this false idea that means like you're shy and you don't like talking in front of people. It's like, no. Like, so it's not an excuse.
Right. No, definitely not an excuse.
So I feel like when we struggle with insecurity, there's like 3 things that it can usually be from, like the roots of that issue. And the first thing would be when you don't have a total grasp on your identity in Christ and like his love for you. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." And that's so cool because to God, we are like a workmanship. And he's put like these talents and these gifts and these abilities in us. And honestly, all we have to do in life is just walk in those. Like we don't have to create our own personality. We don't have to become something new, like from our own effort. Like God has given us stuff that all we have to do is just walk in them. And when we walk in those, we can know and have confidence that it's like, it's a good thing, you know, and that who we are in Christ is a beautiful thing. And we don't have to be like ashamed of, oh, you know, I'm more quiet, I'm more talkative. Like that is a good thing. And all we have to do is operate in those gifts.
Absolutely. That was something that God really had to show me because when I got married, I thought when I married the right guy, I wouldn't be insecure anymore. And then I got married and the insecurity got way worse. And it was weird because I also was very self-aware. It wasn't like I was one of those insecure people who just thought everyone else had the problem, right? We all know those people. But I was so insecure and I knew it. And I think that's why I felt so trapped. I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but I felt trapped in my own fears. And it kind of reminded me of Rapunzel, like how she's trapped up in that tower. I feel like when we allow fear and insecurity, we start kind of building this tower around our hearts and around ourselves. And we start caging ourselves in because you can't be open. You can't have great relationships. You can't, expose yourself to people when you're insecure and when you're fearful. And so we kind of hide ourselves away in this tower. And just like in the movie Tangled, right? Mother Gothel is terrified of Rapunzel finding out who she is because she is the rightful heir to the throne of the kingdom they are living in. She would be ruling over her. And so Mother Gothel she doesn't take her by force, right? Like she doesn't, chain her up and lock her down. She doesn't, beat her or anything like that. She plays mind games. And actually, if you watch that movie with that mindset, you're like, wow, this is really intense. Like,
this is real life.
It's gaslighting to the extreme, right? Yeah. Like she's just constantly putting Rapunzel down, constantly telling her, you think you're special? What? You're being ridiculous, sweetie. You're so naive. This is why you're safer in here. You would not last a day out there. And that's what the lies and that's what the enemy is doing because he can't change who you are. Like you were saying, it's like we already are daughters of God. That is who we are. You're not trying to become a secure person. You are a secure person. This is who you are. You are the ruler and you are to reign on this earth and you have that authority. But the enemy can't take it from you. So he tries to convince you that, well, that's not really for you. That's for the better Christians. That's for the more spiritual Christians, right? The ones on TV, the ones on stage, the ones doing big things for God. They're the ones that get to do that, not you. And so I think we need to realize that a lot of what's going on with insecurity is these mind games.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, she didn't Mother Gothel. That's right.
Mother
The right way to
Gothel,
say it. Okay. Like she didn't chain Rapunzel up. Like you can't be locked in fear. You can't be forced to be fearful or insecure. Like it is all just thoughts and seeds that we allow there and we allow to be planted, and we're watering them with like the acceptance that we have. And once she stopped believing them, that she was able to go out. She was able to leave. It's like, and that's the beauty of insecurity and fear. It's like, once we learn the truth, we don't have to be locked up anymore.
It reminds me of The Princess Diaries, that movie. And when Mia kind of finds out she's a princess, and Julie Andrews, the queen, is telling her, she's like, I am royal by marriage, but you are royal by blood. You could rule. And that's the truth of our situation, is that we did not do anything to deserve this except believe on Jesus. That's all we did. You are royal by blood, by his blood. And there's nothing the enemy can do about that. So he just tries to convince you it's safer in your fears. It's safer in your comfort zone. It's safer in your insecurity. He's trying to shield you from who you are in Christ, your identity, and get you to focus on all of these fears and all of these insecurities so that you will hand over your life. You will basically walk into the prison cell yourself and stay inside without even him needing to lock the door. And I love the part in the last book of the Chronicles of Narnia, the last battle, where the children of Narnia are going up into the high country, and it's almost like God calling out to them, come further up and further in, further up and further in. He's calling out to them to come up, and that is what God is doing with us. He's saying, you are my royal daughter. I have so much for you, but you have to leave the tower. No one else can do this for you, right? Like we trap ourselves in that tower. You have to leave the tower to come further up and further in into everything that God has for you.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like God, I know a lot of us deal with fear, anxiety, and all we want is just God, like just break the anxiety, just break the fear. And it's like he's so powerful, but that the lies are still there. And so it is kind of up to us to get through those fears. Like God can't just break them and get rid of them. Like maybe in some situations, I guess it kind of depends on what it is. But like a lot of times it's just something that we have to step forward in, like step up, step out. And God's so patient with us, like he's still waiting there, and he's still like, I've called you higher. No matter how many times we've failed, we think of it as a failure when we deal with fear, but it's like, no matter how many times we struggle, God is still just so patient and faithful and like steadfast with us. And he's like, yep, okay, it's okay. Like I still see you as brave, because that's who we truly are. Like as we were talking about identity, like we're not fearful, we're not anxious. God didn't make us that way. We have a new heart. We have a new mind. We have the mind of Christ. So it's really just like finding out our real identity. A lot of time with insecurity, we fall into this habit of like trying to be somebody that we're not. Like we see somebody who's really extroverted and we're like, oh, like I wish I was more extroverted. And so you try to like push yourself to be more like that person because that looks good on them. But like God calls us to be our own unique self. And it kind of reminded me of, those tests that basically like tell you when you put in your skin color and your eye color and your hair color, like it tells you what clothes look best on you. And I was thinking about how that's so similar to like the gifts that God's given us, because sometimes like if you see somebody that's in like a bright blue and you're like, oh, that looks so pretty, and then you try to put it on yourself, it's like, oh, I don't know if that looks great on me.
Oops. Yeah.
But it's like because we each have our own set of clothes that look the best with us. And so like God knows us best, and he knows what works for us, and he's given us the personalities we have. So operating in those is what is going to fulfill his will for our life the best, instead of wasting our time trying to be somebody that we're not, and like it's just a struggle. That's like you're doing stuff from a place of work when you could just accept who you are, and then you can like operate in rest.
the whole FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Is just so big with everyone right now. And I mean, it's been that way for a while. And I think a lot of it, of course, is just, social media, and we have access to everyone all the time. And so you are constantly seeing what everyone else is doing, wearing, saying, becoming, spending their money on and getting attention for. And we constantly get exposed to it. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I can be scrolling on Instagram or something, and I just will all of a sudden get stressed. Like stressed out, and I don't even know why. And I think what it is I'm just like, I am so behind. This person is doing this person is doing that, they're cooking, they dress like that, they got clothes from where. Like sometimes people will do the Instagram posts where they're like trying on dresses from a store, and certain stores I'm like, I can't afford anything there, so I just like go, and then I'm depressed, and I'm like, why, what am I doing? And it just, all of a sudden I get so stressed out, and then I get insecure with my own life and my own, my own clothes, my own, the things that I have. And of course, that's just such a ploy of the enemy, because I know I'm so blessed with what I have. It's amazing. And God has given me so many great things. And to think that in just a few swipes of the social media, I just all of a sudden start thinking like, man, I don't have enough. How am I going to get more,
And we're like bombarded on social media. Like it's so much worse because we're bombarded with so many things of like you said, like it could be cooking, it could be how someone's houses look, it could be their hair, and we have too many options. It's like, I love all these things, I want to be all of this. It's like, you're not called to be all of these things,
right?
And I think about all my different friends, and like, my family members that I love, none of them are the same. Like, like none two people are the same, but I love them all equally because they're just being themselves. And it's like, I wouldn't want everyone to be the exact same. So it's like, insecurity is such a trick because it's just like trying to get you to operate in something that isn't you.
It's really, I don't think we hide it as well as we think we do. Jeff and I, the older we get, even though we're not old, but in Jesus' name, we're not old, but it's like the older we get, the more we've become friends with some people who are, some couples who are older than us, right? Like kind of more our parents' age or kind of around that time. And a lot of them, we just look at them, and there's people who are aging well, and there's people who you can tell are terrified of their age. And I think we all know those people who, like, it looks like, and they don't have to be, older. They could be our age. There's people our age who you can tell they're terrified, because I feel like you're younger than me, but I feel like, I'm hitting that part of life where you start seeing this divide where there's people who are okay with their age, and then there's the people who are starting to freak out about their age.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the way they freak out is by trying so hard to look and act younger and to fit in with what the next generation below us is doing, or, trying to relate. And it doesn't actually come across the way they think. It comes across as really insecure, and it's not attractive, And I mean, so it makes me look at myself and go like, oh no, like what am I doing, And it's one of those things where those people who are okay with their age, where they're okay with where they're at in life, and they're excited about their future. They're taking care of themselves, but they're not insecure or like freaking out about where they are in life. There's something attractive about them, both physically and just like mentally in a way. It's like you're drawn to people like that. You want to be like them.
Yeah.
And I think it's because that's who we're meant to be, right? Like that's the maturity of the Christian walk. And really that's what everyone is looking for, because when you're operating in insecurity and you're operating in fear, there's a lack of peace, right? And I think that's like one of the biggest things that stresses us out is that all of a sudden I don't have peace. Yeah. And now we're worried, and now we're trying to get peace from all these other things. I need to get this, I need to get that. I need to, when I look like them, or when I have their life, or when I have that kind of marriage, then I will be in peace. And we're so attracted to people who just seem to be walking in peace.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, really where this trap of insecurity comes from, is the enemy wants us out of peace, because, I mean, it's a fruit of the Spirit. And so we all have it on the inside of us. We all have access to it 24/7. But he wants to convince us that no, you don't have it. You need this in order to get it, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Like when you were talking about when we chase after stuff. And the other day I was driving home, and I was like, because I'm such a words of affirmation person that I can kind of get a little bit too wrapped up. And like, if I hear something that's like someone said that's really good about me, it gives me this like, this high feeling of like, oh, like that's so exciting. But I've come to realize the more I get that, the more I need it. And it's like this chasing after affirmation from people that's never satisfying. And so I was like experiencing that, and I was like, oh, they said that about me. That's so exciting. And it felt really good. But then it's like, I always need more. And I think that's the problem with like trying to get more affirmation from people or hear more stuff that someone said about you. Like, I had to focus back on God and God's love for me. And when I did that, when I was just thinking about like, okay, this is too much, like I'm just way too focused on this, I started thinking about God and how much he loves me. And I almost like that care for other people's opinions just went away. Because God's love and like knowing he accepts me is so much bigger than any good thing someone can say about me. And it's so nice because that's so fulfilling compared to like just needing approval from people. And I wrote this verse: fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. And I felt led to look at that word fearing. And another way you could define that is anxious care. And it was like exactly what we do. It's like I am anxiously caring about what's the next good thing I can hear about myself to just get me a little further in life. You know? It's like, it's just always going to unsatisfy you kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So when we're talking about getting untangled, right? Untangling all of this insecurity from our lives. As long as we're on this earth, we'll probably always have to deal with insecurity and fear, but to realize that we shouldn't have a mindset of insecurity, kind of like what you were saying, just kind of like that being your automatic default of what you go to. And I think one way that we really begin to start untangling that mess is to really just recognize that it is a lie from the enemy. And I know that sounds so simple, but how often when you get insecure do you think of it that way? I mean, I know I never did for a while, and I think it's just really important that when we start to feel the emotions and sometimes it can be like paralyzing, just like feelings of fear and insecurity. I think we need to really take time to just go, okay, what is going on here? Because if we're victims to how we feel all the time, then we can never be victors. You can't be a victim and expect victory in your life. And so we're going to have to start facing off with some of these things if we want to see change. And so when we feel those emotions of insecurity, we need to stop and we really need to say, okay, you know what? What's really going on here? The enemy is trying to come against me. What lie is coming against me right now that's making me anxious? And how can I kind of get rid of it? Maybe it's not true at all. Maybe it's a true fact, but it's not the truth. Maybe you're just really focusing on the wrong thing. I mean, sometimes we just focus on ourselves, or we focus on other people, or we focus on the wrong things, and that's making us really stressed out, focusing on all of these things.
And it's like the enemy is a liar. Like the word is very clear about that. All he does is lie. And the thing is, it's like, maybe it's not a full lie, like kind of like you were saying. Maybe there is truth to some of the things, but that's how it is more convincing, like that's how the enemy was able to lie to Adam and Eve. There's a little bit of truth in there, And so it takes time to dig through our thoughts and be like, what of this is a lie? And don't be tricked up when it's like, well, some of this is true. It's like, well, that's what he does.
Yeah, that's what he does. He knows what's true. He knows what is true. And he'll, like you said, like sprinkle a little bit of that in there. I think sometimes it's easy too, because especially as women, we tend to relate over our struggles. So, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I struggle with this. Oh my gosh, I do too. And now there's this bond that's been formed between us. And there's definitely, that can be okay.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, let's be real with each other.
Let's be real.
Let's be honest.
Let's be honest. There's some good that can come out of that, because now you have a teammate and you guys can walk through this together. But I think sometimes it's easy you almost want to stay in that struggle, because I think sometimes you can get attention for it, right? You can relate to other people with it. It becomes a part of your identity. And that saying, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think we like to look at that with our fear sometimes. We're like, oh, well, this is just something I'm going through and it's going to make me stronger. What doesn't kill you is trying to kill you. Like, I think we need to kind of reassess this line here. It's not trying to make you stronger. The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's not coming to make you a stronger person. He wants to take you out. Problems and bad things that come into your life, they're not here to make you stronger. They want to hurt you, right? They're bad things, and they're not from God. And so we need to realize that when these things come, including insecurity, including fear, when it's coming, like we've been talking about, like, let's get our minds off of the temporal and what's going on in front of our faces and realize that there is a spiritual realm going on around us. And that if you want to come out victorious, then you can't embrace your enemy and go, okay, yes, you're here to make me stronger. No, right? You get your shield up and you start going, all right, we're facing off. Let's do this. And when you turn your attention from the problems to the one who actually gives you strength, then he will bring you through victorious, and then you will be stronger on the other side, not because you went through a problem. Lots of people go through problems and they're crippled, like for life. Like they're crippled mentally, they're crippled, spiritually, they're crippled sometimes, just in other ways. And it's like, you can tell they have a chip on their shoulder, and they didn't come out better. They came out bitter, right? Yeah. And it doesn't just automatically make you stronger. And so what does? Deciding that you're going to face the enemy, you're going to face the problem with God on your side, knowing that he will bring you out in strength. And as Christians, we really just need to kind of face off with our insecurity like that. Like, start taking it seriously for the enemy that it is.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that verse. It's like, never say when you're being tempted, I'm being tempted from God. God does not tempt us, It's like this idea in some circles of Christianity that God is the one that's causing our problems. God is the one who is causing our fears and like tempting us with all these issues. And so we think that if God's bringing us to it, he'll bring us through it. But we need to define, like, what will God bring us to? Because sometimes, like, the fears we're going through, it's not like God brought us to that. So we can't really depend on that feeling of like, God will bring us through this, because it's not from God, that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's equipped us to face everything that we might face in this life, but we don't know what we're going to face. And so we just need to kind of be ready for anything and just not be so fearful. We have the authority. We know who we are. And that's really, at the end of the day, I think what we're trying to say is that insecurity, I know for me, when I took my eyes off of how I was acting and I stopped trying to fake it till I make it, right? There's a lot of that going around. I didn't try to act secure and then I became secure, right? It's like I had to realize who I was. Yeah. And I really, honestly, at the end of the day, I think I just had to be okay with myself, because when you think about it, a lot of the insecurities we feel are because we think that we somehow are faulty, right? Like, I need what she has. Or I will not be okay if what I think is going to happen happens, right? It's like always this thing of like, something bad will happen to me. I will not be enough. I will not be okay. And so when we just kind of get our minds off of ourselves so much and realize that Jesus is enough, he's got us, our faith is in him, right? Not in our circumstances. Then whenever insecurity tries to knock on our door, we can just be like, so what? God's on my side. Like, I'm not going to waste 2 seconds giving worry and stress and anxiety to that, because I know God has me and I'm good with who I am. And if he wants something in my life, he'll bring it, and I can trust him.
Yeah, I love that. And I was just thinking about something very similar. It's like a lot of people feel like they need to get rid of their fear and get rid of their insecurity on their own, and then God can move in their life. But I was listening to Andrew. We both work for Andrew Womack. And I was listening to his episode the other day, and he was talking about how you don't get rid of the issues in your life and then God will come. Like, we don't have to be we don't have to be imperfect and then God will move. What you do is when you flip on the light in a dark room, the darkness leaves. It's not like you have to like shovel out all the darkness and then turn on the light. Yeah. Like, that's the thing with this. It's like, when you ask God to help you with anything, like with insecurity, like, let him move in you. Let him fix your emotions. Like, work with him in this, because like it's a two-way thing. Like, we just need to be willing. It stems from us feeling like we have to live out our lives without depending on God. And it made me think of this verse, 2 Corinthians 3. We are confident in all this because of our great trust in God through Christ. It is not that we think we are qualified to do anything on our own. Our qualifications come from God. So it's like really just trusting that God will operate through us and in us, and like he will get us through every situation. Like there's lots of stuff I feel like I can't do, but I'm not doing it alone. And that gets rid of insecurity, knowing that God's gonna be there for you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to see more, then be sure and subscribe so you can see what's coming next. And also be sure and share this episode with someone that you think it might help.
Thank you so much for watching, and join us next time on our next episode.